Summit May. Now we're getting more information coming in. We can tell our viewers that Prime Minister Modi has scheduled, or there is a plan for Prime Minister Modi to have a bilateral meeting with Iran President Rouhani as well on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. So Prime Minister Modi meeting global leaders, Chinese Premier Jinping, Russian President Putin, and now we are learning that he will have a bilateral with the Iranian President Rouhani as well. However, no meeting with Imran Khan, no bilateral with Imran Khan, an unavoidable exchange of pleasantries at the dais is all that can be expected, which is absolutely unavoidable. It may happen, but there will be no bilateral with Pakistan. There are meetings lined up right through. Prime Minister Modi, it's a busy schedule as he leaves, as he's en route the SCO Summit. Remember, we just got you those visuals that Prime Minister Modi made his way to the SCO Summit. Abhishek Kapoor, Republic TV's executive editor, joins us live this morning. Abhishek, you're there attending the SCO Summit, and Prime Minister Modi, we just got the visuals as well. He's just boarded his plane some time back. He is en route Kyrgyzstan to attend the SCO Summit. But we just broke the story, Abhishek, that bilaterals lined up with Iran President as well. He'll be meeting Putin and Jinping as well. But it's a massive snub, massive statement by Prime Minister Modi to not have any bilateral with Pakistan and not even fly over Pakistan.
Well, Shobit, as of now, 5 bilaterals are planned, which includes that with China, Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, and Iran, of course. The Kyrgyz and the Iranian bilaterals are going to take place tomorrow, while the Chinese, Russian, and Afghan are going to take place today itself. And Prime Minister is going to have a very packed 40 hours when he participates in the SCO Summit. But, of course, what is important is that the aggressive diplomacy that India is going to carry out over the next 2 days, led by Prime Minister Modi, Shobit, not only in terms of increasing India's profile and presence in this very crucial Central Asian region, which connects Europe with Asia, but also focus on key important areas on which India wants to work, and that happens to be energy security for India and some kind of convention against terrorism globally. So you can expect that that aggressive push for isolating Pakistan further on the issue of terrorism would continue. Though, of course, I must add here that the SCO is an organization which is in the backyard of Russia and essentially forms the area of influence of China. In fact, it's a Chinese creation. It was formed as Shanghai 5 in 1996 and took shape in the form of SCO in 2001. And this is the 19th summit for which Prime Minister is coming. Having said that, India's diplomatic objectives would continue, and the team of Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar now hope to leverage every bit of it so that our ultimate objective of peace, energy security, and of course convention on terrorism, so that Pakistan and any other place where terrorism is festered is taken into account. Shobit.
Abhishek, this is a very tight rope that Prime Minister Modi is walking, isn't it? He has bilaterals lined up with, like you mentioned, global powers at the SCO, Russian President, Chinese Premier. And we also just broke the story for our viewers how US is now saying that Modi hai to mumkin hai. So Prime Minister Modi and India having great bilateral relations with each and every world power, isn't it? Is India-US relations going to impact any bilaterals that India has lined up?
Well, absolutely. Shobit, in fact, Well, we have to understand, Shobit, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a leader from India who has attained a global stature, and in recent memory, one would say that not many Indian leaders have had the kind of connect with global politicians and leaders that Prime Minister Modi has had, and that is getting reflected in the manner he is treated by everyone. We have seen how there is a one-on-one connect between him and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Japan. We have seen how he has a direct connect with President Putin of Russia, and he has tried to build a relationship where they can trust each other between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. We saw some of it in the Wuhan informal summit last year. When a leader has that kind of a stature, obviously his involvement and his impact increases. And that is why we are seeing the United States actually coming around to the view that it is Prime Minister Narendra Modi who would deliver. There are certain difficult issues between India and the United States on the trade front in the recent past. We have seen how the United States has increased tariffs on Indian exports. It's part of the global trade war that is going on between the United States and China, and some fallout of which even India is facing. And in that context, if you ask me what impact America's position is going to have on India's engagements in the SCO summit, I can tell you one obvious impact would be on how India or the bilateral goes between Prime Minister Modi and President Hassan Rouhani of Iran, because that is one issue where the Americans have been persisting with us to kind of bring down our engagement with the Iranians, particularly on the issue of oil. And that is something which is directly connected with India's energy security. To how the Prime Minister engages with the Iranians is something that would be very interesting to watch out for in the context of American position. America itself has been wanting to become an observer of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and has not been able to do so, obviously because China and Russia see SCO as their own backyard, and if at all it is a security alliance which is posited against the NATO, they would not really want Americans to be in. Having said that, the focus so far as the Indian delegation is concerned is on two issues. One, the larger trade picture and the subset of which would be energy security. Central Asia is a region known for its uranium resources and other nuclear-enabled material resources. And to that context, presence of India gains significance given the fact that it is essentially a Chinese area of influence. Shobit.
Sheikh, so for our viewers, tell us, when is Prime Minister expected to land at Bishkek? And secondly, on day one, you're telling us on day one itself he has bilaterals with Jinping and Putin. What's his schedule for today?
Well, so Prime Minister has started from Delhi, and it takes about 7-8 hours because of the detour that he will have to take. There was a bit of a controversy with the MEA first asking Pakistan to allow Prime Minister's plane to fly over Pakistani airspace and then subsequently deciding not to, despite Pakistani permission. So Prime Minister would be essentially flying over Oman and Iran and landing in Bishkek at around 2:30, between 2:30 and 3 p.m. And then he has his first bilateral engagement, in fact, the big one, with Chinese President Xi Jinping at 4:50 Bishkek times, which should be about 4:20 India time. And then he has another big bilateral with President Vladimir Putin of Russia at around 5:30 Bishkek time. That should be about 5 p.m. India time. And then at 6:30 there is an informal dinner of the SCO leaders hosted by the Kyrgyz President Jinbayev. And then at around 10 p.m. Bishkek time, which is 9:30 p.m. India time, Prime Minister would have his bilateral with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. Afghanistan, of course, is not a full-time member of SCO, but is an observer. So that's how the day pans out for Prime Minister Modi as of now, and rest of the bilaterals and the exact SCO summit itself with its plenary in the morning happens to be tomorrow.
Right, Abhishek, for our viewers, can you just break down what is the main agenda and what does India hope to gain, the primary gain that India is aiming for as Prime Minister meets his power push, isn't it, at the SCO summit? And what's the primary agenda for his visit?
Well, Shobit, so far as the SCO is concerned, it's their annual summit, a heads of states council. This is the topmost body of the SCO. It meets every year, typically in June. And India had become observer of SCO in 2005. And in 2015, the SCO decided that India can be made a full-time member of SCO along with, of course, Pakistan. And so in 2017, India became full-time member in Astana, Kazakhstan. And since Since then, Prime Minister would be participating in the SCO summit as full member second time. So 2018, he was present in the Qingdao annual summit of SCO, and now it is in Kyrgyzstan, Bishkek. So about the agenda of SCO, obviously, as I said, it's an organization which started as a kind of a security organization. So you can expect that there would be a lot of focus on terrorism, how to make sure that it does not rear its head in this part of the world. And there are concerns about Afghanistan. So Afghanistan would be discussed. And you can expect that now that India and Pakistan both are members, in some ways, India would want to influence the agenda when it comes to security and terrorism to make sure that Pakistan, despite the protection it gets from China, stands a bit isolated even on this platform. So that is on the security and terrorism side. And then, of course, trade issues, economy, energy security, all those things are discussed in the plenary and in the bilaterals. So this is a multilateral with bilateral subset, and India obviously hoping to push its own set of agenda in terms of energy security and trade and, of course, terrorism as Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives here by afternoon. Shobit.
Bishkek, so MEA had already announced some days back that there will be no bilateral with Imran Khan, but there may be an unavoidable exchange of pleasantries on the dais. Can we expect that? And secondly, what is the reason that your sources are telling us for this snub by India to Pakistan as far as the airspace is concerned? On one hand, while Pakistan, on India's request, relented and said we will open our airspace, but India decided to not use it. So what's the reason behind that?
Well, Shobit, so far as the airspace issue is concerned, or use of Pak airspace issue, the fact is that it would have been bad optics. India has been maintaining a position that's not going to have any truck with the Pakistanis post the Pulwama terror attack, and there is no question of any dialogue. And in that, when that position was taken for Prime Minister to be using Pakistani airspace, there was, I think, a bit of a miscalculation on the part of MEA, while the other route was obviously available. Having said that, about your question as to whether there would be any engagement with the Pakistanis, now understand it's a multilateral forum, and there would be a lot of photo ops where the leaders have to be in the same frame and they have to share the dais. So obviously you cannot rule out the possibility of a handshake, but that's not engagement in the truest sense. These are diplomatic courtesies which cannot be avoided. India and Pakistan are not at war or not at a conventional war, and so some engagement has to happen. What is important from India's point of view is to even use that opportunity to underscore that there is no possibility of any dialogue with Pakistan, which is the stated position of India, that dialogue and terror and talks cannot go together. And in that context, the engagement, if at all, and whatever happens, would be to the barest minimum possible, is the indication that we are getting. Shobit.
We have Abhishek Kapoor live at Bishkek, getting us all the latest from Kyrgyzstan. In just a few hours, Prime Minister Modi will land in the Kyrgyz capital for that SCO summit. Abhishek getting us the ground reports, telling us that on day one itself, Prime Minister Modi has mega global meetings lined up with Chinese Premier Jinping, Russian President Putin, the Iranian President as well, but no bilateral with Pakistan at the SCO. India has made a statement, bad optics, and India was sticking to its stand that terror and talks will just not go together. Abhishek, any details as far as the bilateral with Chinese Premier and Russian President are concerned? The first meeting is with the Chinese Premier, and it is yet another statement by India, isn't it?
No, that's going to be a big one. In fact, Shobit, this would be the first meeting between the two leaders, A, after Prime Minister Modi came back to power, and B, after China decided or allowed its objections to lapse, and Masood Azhar got declared as a global terrorist by the United Nations Security Council. So it would be interesting to watch out not just the kind of chemistry that is there between the two leaders, but what kind of further understandings are reached. We are expecting that there would be some kind of invitation from the Prime Minister's side for a next round of informal summit that is slated between the two leaders. Last time it happened in Wuhan in China. This time it is expected or planned in India rather. And all talk of Prime Minister inviting President Xi Jinping to his constituency in Varanasi for the informal. So that's going to be the most important bilateral to watch out, in fact, in the SCO summit, since there is no engagement possible with the Pakistanis. Shobit.
Absolutely. And of course, Abhishek, one quick answer on Prime Minister's meet with Putin as well. India, Russia, historic partners, and India, Prime Minister Modi and even Russian President Putin share a great equation together. So what are your inputs on that? What are your sources picking up on the India-Russia bilateral?
Well, that is the second most important bilateral, I would say, Shobit, of the SCO summit, of all the engagement that the Prime Minister is having. And we have seen how the India-Russia relationship, or the bilateral relationship, has attained a very stable nature with the kind of chemistry that exists between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, both very strong leaders in their own right. And now that Prime Minister Modi has come back with a renewed and stronger mandate in May, you can expect that it would get reflected in the manner in which he is received. Of course, the defense component or the strategic relationship component of the overall India-Russia relationship remains the most important focus area when the two leaders meet, and discussions on how to engage with the Americans, on how to make sure that the headwinds of the global trade war that is going on, they are tackled and kept to the minimum. So all those discussions to take place. But what is important, Shobit, at these multilateral fora is that India engages with everyone present and is visibly seen to be engaging with every geography, and in this case with Central Asia. So our presence itself here as full member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a statement of India's increasing relevance and impact in the Committee of Nations.
Abhishek, there was also an interesting development. We were learning that India is also planning to buy a US air defense system. Now, it's a tightrope as far as defense cooperation is concerned that India is walking, because India has had historically very strong ties with Russia as far as defense cooperation is concerned. But of course, Russia and US are poles apart in the global power stage. So how does India walk this tightrope as far as defense cooperation is concerned? India recently signed that multi-million-dollar S-400 missile defense shield from Russia, and the United States has been pushing for India to buy some technology and defense system from the US as well. So will that be on talks? Will that be on agenda when Prime Minister Modi meets Russian President Putin?
Not really, Shobit. You know, as I said, these multilateral fora are places where you have to be seen, you have to engage, not necessarily getting the brass tacks of the nitty-gritties of deals, and deal making really does not take place at these kind of platforms. So what is important is you engage, you are seen, you have some impact so far as the regional agenda is concerned, and that is why you are here. So it's unlikely that all those deal-making details are discussed, but what is important is that a balancing act is achieved, and that happens when you engage, when you meet, when you discuss. So that's exactly what's going to happen when the Prime Minister arrives here, Shobit.
Abhishek Kapoor, on ground in Bishkek, the Kyrgyz capital, in just a few hours. Prime Minister Modi will land in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, and bilaterals lined up with global leaders. Abhishek Kapoor, Republic TV's executive editor, is there getting us the latest on Modi's visit to the SCO summit. I'd like to thank Abhishek for joining us this morning live from Bishkek, the capital of Kyrgyzstan, and Republic TV is live on ground. We will keep our viewers ahead on all the developments coming in. Just some time back, Prime Minister Modi boarded his plane. He is en route Bishkek, the Kyrgyz capital. Bilaterals lined up with global leaders. He will be meeting the Chinese premier today, the Russian president today, and Iranian president as well. And and no bilateral with Pakistan. It's a snub. It's a statement that India has made, and we will be connecting with Abhishek Kapoor right through the day as he gets us the latest on Modi's visit to the SCO. It's Modi Power Push 2.0, and you must stay with Republic TV.